Okay, welcome, folks. Welcome back. We're streaming again from the Men and Masculine Folks Network. This is our sixth live session. If you've been following us, a number of conversations around masculinity, manhood, and violence, or the current environments and how we as men folks navigate those lives and choose to not use violence in our lives. Like, what does that mean and what does that look like in relationship to masculinity? New ways of expressing masculinity and manhood, I should say. My name is Pheng, and I'm with the Men Masculine Folks Network, and I'll have my good friends here introduce themselves as well again too, so that folks know. And welcome to all those who are joining us at this moment.
Hey everybody, my name is Sean Hayes. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And yeah, in light of this week, I'm really looking forward to this conversation with all of you.
Hi, Roderic. He, him, and I am also looking forward to this conversation. It will be a chance to breathe.
Hello, everyone. My name is Felix Martinez. Pronouns are he, him, and his. Super happy to be back with all of you and have a chance to talk a little bit about masculinity and how we can do to do better, be better allies and better men. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be with you all. My name is Ed. I use he, him pronouns. I'm here in Duluth and also very happy for some human connection during this week. So good to be with you all.
Thank you. And also want to give a shout out and appreciate Austin for joining us as well. He'll be doing some of the logistical background work. So he's on here, but he's not joining the conversation, but definitely he's listening in and chiming in and joining us in other ways. So really appreciating you, Austin, for joining us as well too. I think it's good for us to sort of recognize maybe the opportunity is for us to recognize the moment and really think about how we could take a moment to just like breathe or do something together as men and masculine folks because of the climate that we're in or in the environment that we're all in at this moment, you know. And I'm sure like a lot of people, myself included, are really anxious about the presidency and what's going to happen and the elections or the results of the elections for those who are paying attention to it. So I think in this moment, perhaps it's good for us to do some breathing together just so that we can be in space with each other and allow for ourselves to sort of connect in other ways besides our head, you know, because we're living in uncertain times, and men and masculine folks in uncertain times, what we've seen is we tend to not connect emotionally. We tend to disconnect ourselves emotionally and disconnect from our bodies, actually, and then we tend to just move with our heads and build relationship and build communities in times of uncertain when we don't have a sense of control externally. And so how do we build internal control mechanisms for ourselves as men and masculine folks in times of uncertainty? And that starts obviously with connecting to our body and taking the time in community, like in this moment with all of us, right, to really do some practices with each other. So I will probably lean in on either Sean or Ed to take us somewhere in the breathing or in the silent moment to just come into being with each other. So either one of you could take us.
I'd be willing to do that. I know that I have been finding lots of rest, moments of pause when I think to do this. And so, yeah, I think what's most helpful for me, and y'all can follow along wherever you are and do whatever feels comfortable for you in your body, wherever you are sitting or standing, whatever feels most comfortable. But for this time, we're really going to focus on like a low and slow breathing. So if you can kind of feel into your stomach and like around your belly button area, that's where we want to focus on really inhaling and taking that good air in and just letting it fill us up, and then exhaling. Another thing I like to do is just make sure that my feet are just firmly planted on the ground, because I think in these moments we really need to be focused. We need to be grounded, at least for myself, at least. So there's an invitation there. So just to feel the grounding there. And I think we'll do 5 deep inhales and exhales, if that sounds good. Another thing, if you want to add in some arm movement, I'm going to do this, I'll practice this, but as we're inhaling, you can kind of interlock your fingers like this, and then we're going to start kind of down by our stomachs as we inhale and bring it all the way up, and exhale. Then another inhale in. And exhale. And another inhale. Inhale. And I've lost count, so we'll do one more inhale. All right, and I usually like to kind of wiggle things out there. I usually have some, I don't know, my body wants to move after that. So, how did that feel for y'all?
Very good.
So good.
Yes, needed that. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, I think it's, like I said earlier, I know it's very important that as male-identified folks, we really connect to our bodies and learn how to move in our bodies in more aligned ways and in more connected ways and interconnected ways. So as we connect, and we've been connecting for the last month and a half with each other here, every 2 weeks, it's important for us to also make sure that we're aligning our head to our bodies in those connections with other people and in holding space with other male-identified folks as well too. So I guess the conversation today for all of us really is, because we're in a current moment of uncertainty with a lot of things, especially with the outcome of the presidency. How do we as men and masculine folks, or how do you, the question for all of those, for us in this conversation, for those joining us, is like, how are you moving and how do you move when you're uncertain about your environment, when you're not sure about what's going to happen? Like, how do you move and how do you sort of like adjust yourself, and how do you navigate that uncertainty? Do you make choices that are not the best choices? How do you cope in this moment? What is your heart saying to you? What is your head constantly pushing you up against? How do you just not connect to the world, or maybe perhaps disconnect from the world and disconnect from everybody else? Or are you trying to grab whatever you can in this moment to take control of, to feel a sense of being in control, right? Because we know that for men and masculine folks, for some of us, it's really important to be in control. And oftentimes that control is about external control and less about internal control. So that's, I guess, the conversation that I would like to, and we could have in light of the environment that we're in at this moment. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate the question, Pheng, because it's like, you know, we didn't talk a whole lot specifically about any of this outside of this call, but like, it's a little bit like you're reading my experience over the past few days, that like, as things got more and more tense. I mean, one of the questions that I have for men and masculine folks that are listening, I'd be curious about all of our experiences, like what sort of sensations we've actually had leading into this election, and as things have unfolded, like for me, the air just feels almost thick with the sort of sense of tension, and that's a piece of like, you know, what my body has taken on. There's been a lot of sort of tension and shoulders coming up, and a lot of like, you know, there's been times when I really just I wish that coronavirus wasn't happening so that there could be like some hugs and things like that. Cause like my heart and my chest are just sort of like, feeling like they're a little bit caved in, and that kind of stuff, just I think in response to the knowing, whatever kind of knowing you think it is, about the tension and the pain and the nervousness that people are feeling all around. And then there's the part where like, that's not controllable. That's happening. And there's like, as an individual, I put myself in a place very quickly where I start to spin around like the ways that I feel like I am not enough for the moment, like what is needed from me, and am I actually doing that? And it can cause me to sort of spiral into a place that is a little bit, well, it's definitely too self-critical, and you know, emotionally, it's pretty draining. And the reality is that I do try to control the things that are like around me in my immediate life more as a result of that. And you know, there are some ways that are like more funny, just like, you know, cleaning, and the dishes are all like sparkly and all kinds of stuff like that. And then there are the things like I really have to watch, because I can be my most crabby self with the people that I love, or I can head into conversations, you know, where you know, like relationships with my family, my friends, my partners are the safest and the most solid things around, but I still might like lean the most into trying to control elements of that in order to have some of that control. Like that's the stuff that is the disconnection, or is the dark side of it. But on the light side is like understanding that that's happening, being gentle with myself, remembering if I'm starting to feel not gentle with others, like to interrupt and be and simply be gentle, and let the fact that like there are people and relationships and, you know, the things around me that that are life-giving and are energy-giving. And frankly, like the election matters, but the way that we are holding one another and committed to one another's safety and well-being, and to the safety and well-being of other people, is that's the most important piece we got anyway. So it's been for me, a lot of like sort of just trying to be aware of when I'm starting to like try to hold things really tightly, and release and let myself actually sort of be nourished, instead of gripping so tightly.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. I need to agree with you on that. That's something that, you know, when the unhealthy Felix, when you think about tension, oh, I don't have any tension, I'm fine. But then I got an email, for example, this morning from one of our directors in Casa Esperanza, and I'd say, you know, soften your forehead, unclench your jaw, or relax your shoulders. And when I did that, I was like, wow, yeah, I have a lot of tension in my body just by reading that, and I start realizing like, wow, maybe I need to slow down a little bit. But, like you guys mentioned, everything that's going on right now on the TV affect us one way or the other, affect our communities. And, that's a moment when we need to maybe sit with our loved ones, have a conversation. If you have next to your sister or your brother and you see that he's stressed, just give him a hug, just have a coffee with them, just let them know that whatever happened, we're gonna be all right. That's why the importance of do this work, just to love each other, support each other, just because hope is the last thing we need to lose, in moments like this. But yeah, and as a man, that maybe those unhealthy habits, when I read that email, when I click in my head, like, wow, my God, I didn't realize I'm that stressed. And start looking at my watch to see, my pulse rate, and see they was really high sometime yesterday during the middle of the day. It's like, wow, what the heck, sometimes we don't think it affects us, but it really does. So this is a time for us to, as a community, as a family, to get together, hug our loved ones, have deep conversations on how this situation affects us and what we need to do in order to support others, support ourselves, and and support our communities. Just because there are difficult times, and sometimes as men we don't talk about it. It's not common for me maybe in the past just to go to my friends and say, you know what, I'm really stressed, just because my friends are gonna start laughing at me, and and they wouldn't take me serious. So now that I have a different mentality, that I've been having this type of conversation with amazing folks like you guys, I've opened my mind to be a better man, to understand that we really need to be vulnerable and realize that, yeah, that tension affects us, and sometimes those unhealthy behaviors can affect others around us. So as a man, there's so much we can do, but yeah, let's take our time to listen to our bodies, listen to our heart, taking the time like Sean did, just to breathe, do some of those exercises. That helps a lot and make us make better decisions, be more relaxed, and and make decisions that gonna benefit others. So thank you. Yeah.
I think in moments like this, I tend to of uncertainty, I tend to slow down and become very self-reflective. And hope anyway that there is some learning to be had about the environment in which which is uncertain. There was an artist named John Biggers who talked about moments of uncertainty, and he equated moments of uncertainty as like at nighttime when you're walking through your living room and you know where everything's at, right? You know where the furniture is at, right? And so most often you know sort of which way to go. Occasionally you'll stub your toe, but you're kind of hyper aware. Some other senses come into play. So I think that when in moments of uncertainty for me, I kind of feel like I'm in that dark living room trying to cross the other side, and I'm really pausing to examine, if I'm going to run into anything. And so I do everything is slower. I don't talk to many people in times of uncertainty. And I do a lot of watching. And so the good thing, I guess, is I have a couple of people who text about all kinds of things. So they become my source, right? So at least, particularly in this time, this election, I haven't watched any news or heard any news. It's all been through the texts of some folks that have been keeping me abreast. And that actually has helped my mind to be a bit more at rest.
Ooh, yeah, I I like your practice there, Roderic, of slowing down. I think that's like a new lesson that I'm in the process of learning, that this whole, situation with the pandemic and now with the election, the need to pause and the need to slow down, to not always say yes to all of the things, to say maybe or to say no. I've had to do a little bit of that this week just to, take care of myself, and kind of know where my boundaries need to be in order to, take care of me, take care of my wife, Amy, and our kid, and then all of the other people that, we love and care about. I think Felix mentioned, lots of folks within the community are, they're fearful. They're afraid of the outcome, of what will happen, of what it all will mean. And so, I think for me, trying to finding that light, finding the hope, like reminding myself that like our work will continue. We're going to continue building relationships and building safe and loving communities, beloved community. Like I can't forget about that in these moments, because it's like that is what's really holding me, keeping me grounded. And then Ed, I was like thinking about, what has my body been like this week? Really, really tense. I mean, I feel like I'm just like a block of wood, where it's like, oh, okay, I gotta like kind of shake some of that out. When I actually think to take a deep breath, it's like in this moment where I'm like, oh, have I been holding my breath this entire time? So I mean, just, I'm, personally, I am really not aware of those moments until I actually like it comes back to me and I'm like, okay, hold on. I need to take some deep breaths. I can feel I'm getting anxious. I can feel that my anger is rising or whatever that is, right? And I don't want that to, rub off and land on all of these people that I care about. So, for me, remembering to like check, do I have a neck? Like let's work on that. Let's, just reconnecting into the body and the breath. And that has been doing wonders for me, when I think to do it. So it's a practice. It's a new way of being.
I think what resonated with me, was what Ed shared in terms of like the word awareness was so keen to me. I reflect back on like where I was years ago as a teen, right? Growing up as a young man. And when you're a teen, at least for me, it was like I was very unaware of what was happening in the body at all, right? On top of the fact that you're going through puberty and changes are happening, right? And your head is like developing at the same time in terms of like your frontal lobe here is developing, and then you're a teen. And so this is why we're like, we don't get young children at all who are developing at this point. So I wasn't understanding, and I was like, it's like you don't know how to describe what was happening, right? And then I would go into places like similar to what Roderic and Sean were describing there too, is like it would be like this slowness, but then that slowness would be the added to that part would be like the disconnect. There was a slowness that was a disconnect from people. It was a slowness that was connected to quietness that was then led to, again, disconnection, right? And that, when I show up, people should just know, like my mom should just know, or my sisters should just know, or my dad should just know how to care for what I need, right? That they just needed to. Like how the hell am I supposed to know what's going on with me? You are supposed to know what's going on with me, because I'm a man. And when we live in communities and societies that value masculinity and manhood and those very rigid ideas, we get taken care of, right? And we don't have to, and I didn't have to manage that awareness. I didn't have to manage that awareness at all. I didn't have to navigate that. It wasn't my responsibility in that moment and in those moments to understand or know what was happening. It was on mostly my mom to really understand what was happening, right? And with like obviously taking time to really like listen to her insight and feedback, then on top of that, and being able to then move away and live on my own, far away from my parents and whatnot, and understanding my own responsibility, then I started to understand more of like what was happening in here, what's going on here, and then having a lot of like conversations with yourself, like that consciousness piece, a lot of that conversation with yourself, and that voice, that shame or that you're not enough voice inside of me, you know, coming up, the not enough of a man, or you're not masculine enough here, those pieces coming up, right? And having those kinds of conversations. So I think the awareness part is so keen. Like how my thing is like, how did I get to the place? And I guess I'm answering the question of like, how did I come to the place of understanding my own awareness that, oh shit, you know, this is my responsibility, right? And that I can't be pouring it out. I can't just be emptying it out and oozing out all over the place like a glob, you know, like that green thing in Ghostbusters, you know, and be like dropping green glob everywhere, be like, oh, that's on you. Sucks for you to be in my way, you know. Yeah, and just throw it out at them. And now it's like, oh no, I have to contain it, right? Like there has to be some containment on it, and there has to be some awareness, like, actually, I need to be careful because then it spills over to people and it impacts them, you know, and there's a really big impact on people if I don't actually take care of it, not just contain it, but like really take care of it, you know. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, Pheng, that like I really appreciate that because like it does feel like the first thing is like interrupting and being aware of the way that we're like flinging out like globs, but then the next, like the containment part is also about like sort of figuring out what it is, how do I actually feel what is actually going on for me. Take the time and the space to like to feel. Actually in this week, one of my close friends who I talked to and was actually having like a kind of a version of this conversation with said, when was the last time that you actually, you know, that you actually took some time to be sad and grieve, right? And so like a question that I think is important for men in particular is like, do we take the time to feel, I mean, sad, all the emotions really, but when we're talking about something like this, like the sadness that that is existing, and do we give ourselves the space to like, you know, the containment is one part of it, but then we also have to like allow it to move and flow within us so that it can eventually be cleared and run its course and teach us the lessons that it has to teach us, and all of those sorts of things. I remember 4 years ago, around this time, I'm not a person that most people I think would describe as being particularly like aggressive in the way that I would approach conflict. But I remember driving around after the election and seeing signs and wanting to like get out of my car and literally like kick them out of the earth and have them like flying across the street. I had fantasies about it. I you know, all sorts of things like that. And like, it's easy to stop there and be really angry. Or it's easy to stop there and like sort of shove everything in, and men are taught to do that. That's why I'm wondering, like, am I enough? Am I doing what I should? I'm spiraling because I'm supposed to show up and actually like be big enough for the moment. I'm supposed to be able to hold the impossible, right? Like I'm supposed to perform into a bunch of these things. And the reality is that I feel sad about the way that that people in my community are behaving towards and treating and other people. I feel really worried and afraid of some of the things that could happen because of the level of conflict and polarization. And I'm definitely sad about the being in the conditions to worry about that. I feel sad for the people that I know are struggling, like struggling to the point where, you know, it's hard, like you're going to be laid flat for a week after an election like this. Like there's so many, I mean, I could keep going about the things that are sad. And I think a part of the thing as men and masculine folks, like there are many responsibilities that we have in many ways that we need to show up for one another and in community. But there's also the responsibility to actually listen to our bodies and figure out how to bring the neck back and actually take a nap because we feel absolutely exhausted, and actually take some time to, whether you can put your sadness, you know, into the earth, into a pillow, whether you can cry it out, like the ways that you actually, or that I actually do that. And it's not a thing that I'm the greatest at in the world, but it's, when you were talking, Pheng, I was just thinking like, yeah, it's I'm so used to like holding it and then moving and having solutions and doing stuff, when in reality, especially in moments like these, if I'm going to be what I need to be to not only the people in my immediate circle but to my community, I have to be like rested and have taken enough emotional care of myself to actually be able to you know, to hold steady for folks moving forward.
Oh, I can relate a lot to that. I mean, I feel like I shared before. I mean, you know, before election, you know, I was dealing with lots and lots of anger. And it wasn't until I actually started sort of digging down deeper underneath that, where it was like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid and I'm feeling really sad about the things that we're, you know, missing out on or whatever, you know, pandemic wise. And then, you know, I think I haven't really given myself a chance to feel that when it comes to the election and the status of all of that. You know, I think I'm the type of person that wants to like keep going, you know, power through, be all things for all people, which I know logically that is impossible, but I keep trying. And then it's like, hold on, yep, I need to, you know, believe what I'm telling all of these other people that I care about, you know, take a shower, eat some lunch, you know, feel sadness and let tears fall. You know, I mean, for me, I'm not good at opening up that sadness door, but for me, it's funny. I'll be like, you know, streaming through TikTok or something, and I see some adorable dad and baby video, and then the tears just start flowing. And, you know, just like that opening, you know, whether it's like this happy, funny, hilarious thing that I can relate to on TikTok, you know, but then like it's this avenue where I can open up and I can let that, you know, let those tears come out, and dang, I mean, it feels so much better rather than trying to just hold it all in and push it down and be strong in that way. Like, I know that I'm strong, and I also know that if I don't take care of myself, I'm not going to be anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sean. I also watch TikTok too, and I see myself in those moments too. You know, I thought I was the only one, but obviously not. But yeah, it's really hard when we do this type of work, especially also when you work with youth, you know, and you need to be type of inspiration or role model to them, when in the reality we have a lot of insecurities, you know, but we need to show them strength. We need to show the youth, you know, the resources. That's okay to make mistakes. It's okay that it's not gonna be a easy way to do things sometimes, but it's on that point that, you know, as a community, we start healing, we start learning and ways to support each other. But yeah, it's tough, and everybody show up that anger, those fear in different ways. You know, there's not a linear way to fix things. So through conversations, through learning from each other, so maybe someone's gonna hear our conversation today, say, you know what, maybe I want to watch TikTok now. I want to look for something, a movie or something or ways to, you know, to get that stuff out of you, because it's not easy. It's okay that it's not easy, and for men that we want to do something, it's okay to feel in that situation. I don't know what to do. You know, I know what I'm doing is causing harm, but I don't know how to fix this. You know, when in the reality, there's a way. You know, there's a lot of good organizations, you know, in all different states doing a great job with men and masculine folks. You know, just contact them. Just read emails. There's a lot of great books out there that they can give you, you know, a guide of how to start making that change on us as men, because it's not easy. But you know, if we really focus and try to make a difference, it's the beginning, and the results they're going to be visible right away.
Felix, I think that I think it's good to really practice articulating the way in which we deal with, like we're doing today. And so, but it reminds me of that people are watching us, right? Especially, you know, young folks are watching us and modeling. And if we're not really clear, if we don't, I think, take the initiative to talk about the ways in which we're dealing with something, they'll pick maybe a habit that is not so helpful. It reminds me of a story of a woman who she'd make a pot roast and she'd always cut the end off and put it in the pot and cook it. And so when her daughter grew up, and her daughter would watch her, and her daughter she grew up, she got a pot roast. She cut the end off, she put it in the pot. And then someone asked her, well, why do you cut the end off? You know, what's that about? She said, my mother always does it and it makes it, you know, it tastes better. So then she wouldn't ask her mother, and her mother said, well, I cut the end off because it didn't fit in the pot, right? So the daughter was, you know, so our folks, both our friends, because I say young folks, but I think all our folks will sometimes look at our habits as being prescribed in a way that we're really not prescribing them. We're prescribing them situationally, like the small pot, as opposed to, you know, making it taste better, making it taste good. And so I really dig that thing you talked about, Phil, in terms of being mindful that people are watching us, and that we need to really talk about the choices we're making, and just being really vigilant that eyes are on us.
Yeah, I think especially in the part that when you don't have that awareness that we were talking about earlier, and everyone's like, oh, you are really angry, and you're like, oh, I'm not, but then you're expressing it. You know, we've seen, I think, many folks in our lives who are particularly men, and you're like, oh my God, we're just talking about this, and you're all upset and pissed off, and you give that feedback, and they're like, I'm not, I'm just. And we're like, well, then your tone and you look different. Those are the moments where I always say, if I had a mirror, I'd be like, holding it right back to him and be like, do you see this? This is how you are in this moment. So like that image keeps coming up in my head as we're having this conversation of like, just the lack of awareness, you know, and then like the tough, you know, I think Jackson Katz puts it as the tough guys image, right? Like that Ed and Sean, you were both talking about, is like just plowing through it, and whether you know or not, you're gonna act and you're gonna pretend you know, even though you show up, and the way you show up and the way that you pretend you know is so effing screwed up, and it screws everybody up. But you're like, I got this, and you really don't got anything, you know. So I'm reminded of Tony Porter from A Caught to Men's story about how he tells his young boy, you know, his young son who's 8, like, you take care of mom and daughter, and mom and daughter is much more older than the 8-year-old, and like, what is he going to take care of? He's only 8, like, you know. But it's those kinds of messaging, right, that instill in us that we have to just keep plowing through it, and whether you know it or not, you better know, you better just know. And that's, I think that is really troublesome, especially when we're talking about young men and boys, when we just share messages with them, but we don't really share them what that practice is, right? Concretely, or give them that understanding concretely that this is what I mean by that, right? Um, just like an example, that couple years ago, we were grilling outside and I was like, son, why don't you go get the steaks? And he went and got me 3 steaks instead of the steaks that we went and bought. Because he heard it somehow that that was what it is, you know? And so that's just an analogy about what I'm talking about here, is that we have to be very clear. I, for one, am learning through my 2 sons, like that I have to be very clear with them, right? About what it is that I'm saying to them and the messages that I'm telling them. Because if I'm not clear with them and I don't show them like what you're saying, Roderic, they're going to make something up. They're going to do something different than what I'm saying to them. And if I'm not explicit or articulate enough with them and allow for them to do discovery for themselves too, they're going to do what makes most sense to them and do what they believe or think others need them to do, instead of acting and moving the way that they would want to move and act. And I know there's a lot of men and masculine folks out in this world who move in relationship to what others think they should be doing and moving, rather than what they know to be true, and move in the way that's true to them. You know?
Yeah, I think that what you, Pheng, and Roderic were both saying about how younger people are watching us is incredibly important. And it also goes, like, I'm a 37-year-old who doesn't have kids, and it goes for adults too. Like, and I think you both were hinting at that as well, or saying that explicitly. But I think about how important it is to the way that I'm shaped personally, the people that are around me, and the way that I learned, and then I think it goes the other way around too. But it makes me think about things like, you know, Pheng, for instance, is somebody who's been doing. We're about the same age, but Pheng's been doing gender equality work longer than I have, and I've like looked up to him for a long time. And when we started really working together, he would do these things where he would call me and he would be like, I don't know the answer to this thing. Can I like talk? Can I talk through it with you and like just get some ideas and see if you notice anything? And here's how I'm feeling about it. And he would just like, you know, basically take the walls, all of his walls down, and like, and sort of like share what was going on and what he was worried about and how he was feeling about it. And I was like, wow, you know, like I sort of had this thing where you know, I sort of held things until they would sort of explode out of my mouth, and somebody would end up hearing everything about it. And here was Pheng like trusting me enough to just like basically walk up to me or call me on the phone and be like, you know, here's something that's really heavy on me right now. Can I talk about it with you? And like apparently feeling like I was, you know, deserved that level of trust. But like most importantly, he obviously, like you obviously, Pheng, were getting like support before it became like a crisis. And like I learned from that, right? So then I started to do that with people on a more regular basis too. And I think about in moments like this, like, are we letting other adults see us be sad, see us in our sadness? Are we showing like a depth of love and connection to people that we can, to other men and masculine folks included, so that they see that, and that like when that feels good and it's something that people are actually longing for but not you know, not experiencing, that it can be replicated. And it's probably still just as important as you were saying, Pheng. Like, I don't know, at least I can be pretty dense, where sometimes people need to actually explain to me why it is that we're doing whatever it is that we're that we're doing. So like once in a while, a little bit of that sort of thing is useful too. But we should not underestimate, and that's why it's so important that we like sleep and we shower and we eat and we take care of ourselves, because people really are like we all influence one another. And it can be in the way where we're all like got all of our walls up and are sort of doing our best, you know, not to smash into one another, or it can be in ways that are really, really, really like supportive and caring and nourishing too.
I do think that this election, this situation, is a great time to talk about using the 2 candidates to talk about men's response to uncertainty, because I think that there could be a bigger contrast, but there's a pretty big contrast. And I've heard some folks using shorthand to describe different candidates and their displeasure with them. And I kind of think, I wish we had a chance to unpack some of that more, because I don't think the shorthand descriptions really serve to say what might be wrong or right with that person's behavior. So I think it is, oddly enough, a great time to be talking about men and our response to uncertainty, using the current elections as a starting place.
Yes, I agree with that, because we could see it in the response, from the two candidates. If you observe through a particular gender lens of how men operate and masculine folks are to operate in this world, we can see a lot of what, even in this conversation, play out with the two candidates as well too, right? In terms of how they're navigating, and then like how people respond to us. I think that that's an important part, is that when we live in a society that really values men in that hierarchical way and puts men on pedestals and masculine expressions on pedestals, it's important for us to also think about how people then respond to how we as men and masculine folks move in uncertain times, right? Because they are going to either align themselves with us for fear of us rejecting them, or implicating quote unquote violence onto them, or whatever the case may be, or they are on a very different end of the spectrum to us and completely don't want to be in any relationship with us and want to disconnect themselves from us, right? So that's like the two ends of the spectrum. And then obviously sort of everybody is in wherever in the middle to that. And I think that we have a responsibility to that, right? And I think it's really important that we really understand our responsibility to how people then respond to us, because we really think that it's people are doing this to us, right? In uncertain times, and even in certain times, as male folks, we always think people do these things. She was just pushing my button in the case of domestic violence, right? She knows how to just push my button. She just knows, like my wife just knows. And it's like, she's not sitting there every day thinking and reading your mind about like, oh, I'm just going to do this, right? I have a choice in that on how I want to respond as to, right? I have a choice in how I want to respond. And my only choice isn't punching her, or isn't just yelling at her or making threats to her. Those aren't my only choices. I have more than those choices. And so how do I respond in a different way? And I have a responsibility to actually like take a different path, or choose a path that doesn't have violence in it, that's not going to cause harm to her or anybody else, right? And so I think that there's a heavy burden on us to do that. And there's a heavy responsibility for us as male identified folks to do that, because we live in that kind of a society where men are to be leaders and men are to be decision makers, in those kinds of ways, or are seen as that, right? And then we have to be accountable. Going back to our accountability conversation, is we also have to be accountable, right? That's our accountability if we understand our response and how people then respond to us in it, right? Yeah.
When I was thinking about that button piece too, like we always have this expectation that whoever that is, whether it's our kid or a spouse, a friend, you're pushing my buttons. Well, like thinking about accountability, like we should be looking at those buttons that we have. What is this button that I have that every time my wife asks me to do the dishes, or why I haven't done the dishes, I immediately you know, like, yeah, what are those buttons, and can we start noticing them? Can we start, you know, speaking that into existence? You know, if I say to my wife Amy, okay, whatever reason I don't want to do the dishes, and I think it's actually because I don't want to disappoint you or upset you, or, you know, like, what is that underneath there? Is it just laziness? Sometimes it's laziness, right? But I think for me, you know, there's usually something there that is sort of like itching to get to the surface. um, and then I get to make that choice. You know, do I dig into this a little deeper? Do I look at my own laziness? Do I look at my own, you know, how quickly I jump to anger, and why is that? You know, and then like the accountability piece, you know, not just to ourselves and our friends and people, but like between us, you know, those of us with similar experiences, where if I can call Pheng or Felix or Ed and say, what the heck, this dishes thing keeps coming up, and we're just getting into these fights or whatever it is, you know, like, we need to be able to have those people to reach out to sort of process through, I think. But we have to be willing to take that step to like look at it, you know, if that makes sense.
I know. I was when you were sharing there. Was reminded of a conversation some years ago. We were talking about button pushing, and we were like the suggestion that we came up with in that conversation was like men should just carry around the button that they just push and just have people just push that button. Here, I'll push that button since you don't know what it is. Let me push that physical button on you so you can hear it beeping, and then we can dissect what it is that what that button is about, right?
One of the things that I think is like really hopeful and good about a conversation like this too is that like that example about better understanding your buttons. Like it's so easy for, particularly for men, like we learn these ways of discounting and separating ourselves from particularly things that are about nurturing or taking care of ourselves or feeling and that kind of stuff. And that's a good thing to notice and interrupt. But I think that one of the things is that when you start to realize that you're feeling afraid or you're feeling angry or you're feeling sad, or you start to do the thing where we realize that there are patterns, there's habits, there's buttons, and that we are like that we're losing our necks, that other people are having to have windshield wipers to get rid of the stuff that we're flinging at them, like all that kind of stuff. That actually is ultimately like it's service to the community and into family and to friends to do that work. It's also service to self, and like we each do actually matter in a way where we take care of ourselves in that way. And there's a beauty in actually it's important to like to be in a place of of knowing that and practicing what it is that we do to be to really be as intact as we can for ourselves and others. One of the people I learned the most from in the world is said recently, like when we feel like something is broken, like it feels to us like that means that something is really wrong and that we should, it can cause us to feel fear, it can cause us to feel anger, it can cause all these things. But oftentimes when we feel broken or we feel like the things around us are broken, like it is also the sign that there is something intact about us that has a sense of what wholeness would be. Uh, and so allowing that possibility as men to like to be there for us, that we can tend to what wholeness is, and we can tend to what it is to like be intact and be happy and healthy and thriving and there for other people. That's really something that gives me a lot of hope, particularly in times like these.
Yeah, buttons. Of course, we all have that button that sometimes when it's pressed, it can explode. But I think it's very important when, we know that's a button there, is just, have that conversation with your partner, so they both have an understanding, those things that, not as excuse, but to learn from each other and try to learn ways to avoid touching that button, and learn how we can take care of ourselves, because this is very important. We're human beings. We shouldn't need to be in a situation that we're going to explode, and whoever's closer to us, those are the ones who are going to pay the consequences. We're smarter than that. So what we can do when we know we're getting to that point, it could be from the stress of work, it could be from driving stuck in traffic jam. Sometimes there's certain things that can make us push that button. So we need to take care of ourselves, and we need to, as with your partners, know how we can support and try to avoid getting to those points so we live a healthier life, and we can learn to deal with problems, because life is full of problems. We're always going to be in situations that you're going to feel that that's someone just right there just to touch that button, and we need to avoid that. That's why sometimes there's so many problems with fights, abuse, just because people don't know how to control themselves. And sometimes so easy as, what, I'm gonna walk outside, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna go and wash the dishes, something that I don't like to do, but I know when I do it, I keep my mind in something else. Watch TikTok, like we mentioned before. There's a lot of ways we can learn about ourselves and live a healthier lifestyles, and do it in a way that we're more vulnerable, and we're taking care of each other, and we're taking care of our loved ones, avoiding being in a situation that you're gonna explode. So it's very important to take care of ourselves, take care of the people around us, but realize that sometimes when those buttons are pressed, we can cause a lot of harms, not just to ourselves, but the people around us.
I think that's a good sort of quote unquote end place, or settling place, Felix, the taking care of ourselves. Because in uncertain times, it's not about trying to control our environment as men and masculine folks, but it's about caring for our bodies. It's about caring for your emotions that we've been talking about throughout this conversation. And it's about understanding you, taking the opportunity to well resource yourself in that moment, to do that reflection that Roderic was talking about, to do that slowness as well, practice, right? And to not be haste in your decision making, or to not move quickly in it, or to not show up like I've got everything under control when you actually don't have anything under control at all. And to also be very transparent and honest about what you know and what you don't know. So I think that is, if anything, that would be what we would want people to take away from this conversation, is that. And I'm going to allow for each one of the brothers here to share their takeaway from it. But I think that's like the messaging that we would want for folks to take away, is like, care for yourselves in this uncertain time, not only for yourself, but for the people that you love, and then build and connect with the men and masculine folks in your life. Connect with them, because uncertain times doesn't mean you should isolate. It means you should keep connecting with them in a much more deeper and intimate way, like what we're doing here, So I leave it to all of you to also share your last parting words as we're coming to a settling here.
I would maybe echo just being really conscious of marching in and assuming that you've got it all, and being honest about that. And so maybe marching in and going, I want to have it all under control, but I don't, right? So maybe it's that additional context that you give to that habit of walking in like everything's under control.
For me, self-care, the importance of self-care, teaching that to our loved ones, to our youth. Also, that's going to help us make better decisions, live healthier lifestyles, and show more love. Show more love. We all need love, you know, even that sometimes we pretend we don't, we need love.
Yeah, the summaries feel kind of easy, like they flow easy today, and I agree with what people said. But there's definitely for me, in this conversation, I'm learning some stuff around like the difference between really tending to myself and my impact on my environment versus trying to control the environment around me, and so that's a big one.
Ooh, that is a good one. Yeah, I'm a person who likes to, yeah, feel in control, and I don't at all. So, yeah, I think, yeah, how can we create a sense of, you know, safety and hope in the unknown? So I know I'm going to be continuing to think about that, and yeah, I'm very thankful for each of you, you know, getting to connect in this week, you know, I'm grateful that our talk fell during this time. So as always, super great to hear all of your thoughts and experiences and wisdom. We want to thank all of you from Facebook who have tuned in live, and anyone else who's watching our YouTube channel later on. Yeah, we really want all of you to join us in these conversations. You know, pop in on your lunch hour if something stands out to you, or if you can relate, drop that in the comments. We really want to involve all of you and make this a bigger conversation together. So again, we just want to thank you for joining us in this live conversation. I want to thank our partners, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota and the Women's Foundation for their support in putting these on. And just a reminder, these are happening every other Thursday at noon, that's Central Standard Time. So you can like our Men and Masculine Folks Network page on Facebook, and then you'll get all the notifications. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we will have all of that information linked in this video. So again, thank you all of you. Love seeing all of your faces, and enjoy the rest of your day, all of you. We'll see you in 2 weeks.